It's game time. The Kid Gowie. Ravens Nation. All we know is purple and black. And if you're not a Ravens fan, Welcome to Baltimore, Maryland, M&T Bank Stadium, where opponents don't make it out alive unless we bury them. Every team be afraid of them, especially all the quarterbacks, cause our defensive linemen won't hesitate to leave you sacked. Let's take a minute, go back to Super Bowl 35. Domination was an understatement up against the Giants. Numerous touchdowns, they put up numbers, and it didn't take a nutritionist to see they hunger. Only stat Kerry Collins could get was interceptions. He must have thought throwing to the D counted as receptions. The pass was legendary, but don't sleep on the present. Our secondary make quarterbacks avoid their direction. You tryna run the ball, you better hope your blockers work. You can juke, you can spin, but your destination's the turf. This is a man's game, being soft will get you hurt. Watch the defense force a fumble and the fans go berserk. 17 weeks, only one league out of 32 squads. No one's messing with our team. We all bleed black and purple, you can check our IVs. Raven Nation fly high, watch us all spread our wings. Put your game face on, embarrass the competition. You ain't talking about the greatest if the Ravens aren't mentioned. Screw every other team, cause those dudes are whack. In Baltimore, the only thing we know is purple and black. Go! They always win when the championship's on the line. So if you hoping that they failed, then you really wasting your time. Going that's the 49ers, I'm pretty sure they remember when they made a comeback, but weren't declared the winner. 2 rings down, but you know they won't stop now. If the opposing D's caught slipping, you know exactly how that goes. That's another deep connection for 6 points in the end zone. The stadium goes wacko as Ravens put in work. Pittsburgh Steelers, that still curtain is looking more like a skirt. So tell me who they say is gonna beat them Bengals? Who used to be the Browns until they relocated? Ravens, they are one of the greatest. There's simply no denying it. To beat them, bringing your A game's a requirement. With the youth of the team, I bet they still be dominant, even after the greatest linebacker's retirement. 17 weeks, only one league out of 32 squads. No one's messing with our team. We all bleed black and purple, you can check our IVs. Raven Nation fly high, watch us all spread our wings. Put your game face on, embarrass the competition. You ain't talking about the greatest if the Ravens aren't mentioned. Screw every other team, cause those dudes are whack. In Baltimore, the only thing we know is purple and black. Go!
Yo, welcome to another edition of szg Sports Live here with my guy in Raven. We haven't done a video in a minute. Obviously, I'm overseas, so a couple of the guys, we haven't been able to do more collabs. I'm hoping to finish that next year. But thank you for coming.
Yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate you having me. You already know what time it is, Sonny.
So obviously the Ravens are an interesting offseason, and obviously, so I'm in the AFC North talk, and then I hear every week now, where the Ravens are gonna lose Lamar. You guys are gonna be bad next year, and you're gonna just it keeps going and going, right? So I did some research, right, and I was like, okay, there's pros and cons to both scenarios, like. What do I want? And I'm assuming what most fans want, and I know you want this too in Raven, is Lamar to stay in Baltimore, right? It's the only, I always say it's the only quarterback jersey that I ever owned. Never owned a Flacco jersey. I always own defensive players jersey. And I mean, I even have him there in the back. I all in on Lamar, love Lamar. But if you think about, if you try to detach yourself, the emotion, which is hard, very hard, right? Because we humans, that's what we do. There's aspects that you can have Lamar not being in Baltimore and be better going forward. Now, the biggest problem that I have with this argument is there's one person in Baltimore that people love a lot, and I think he's good, but I'm not completely sold. Do you think you know who it is?
You talking about Patrick Queen?
No.
A player or a coach?
It's not a player.
Oh, Harbaugh then.
No, it's actually Eric DaCosta.
Oh, okay.
Half of our problems, I think, starts with Eric DaCosta. Actually, I give Harbaugh a lot of flag, but players seem to love Harbaugh, right? So I can't. Obviously, the players like him enough that I don't know if he's the problem, but Eric DaCosta is where it starts, in my opinion. The lack of talent, and people say, "Oh, the Ravens didn't go all in when Lamar was in talent, right?" And I think that is true to a certain extent. If you believe the rumors, right, for the Shefties and all that, the Ravens were in on DeAndre Hopkins when he was being traded from Houston, right? And there were a couple other players that they tried to sign, right? T.Y. Hilton and some of the other more veteran receivers.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get them in Baltimore, right? So what they did was they never did this with Flacco. They went and got 2 first-round picks on receivers.
Okay. Yeah.
Some of them, to a certain extent, both of them were good. None of them were great. Well, Bateman right now has been 2 years injured, so we'll see. Love Bateman.
Yeah.
And Hollywood was good. Not a number 1 receiver now in Baltimore, and couldn't do that. He wasn't a number 1 with Arizona either. But certainly good. They weren't bad receivers. But I feel like Eric DaCosta, for me, in my opinion, he's really good at assessing defensive players, right? Like the players that we have brought on the defensive side, not only on the trades, but on the drafting, have been really good. Think about the defensive draft picks. On the offensive side, they've been good, but we have missing a lot of offensive players. But think about this year. Think about this year, Ojabo, a guy that I like. And when we drafted him, I said, like, this is a pick for next year. Not this year, next year, because he just came from a bad injury. And then the pro. George Pickens was there. All our receivers are smaller-ish receivers, right? 6 feet was our highest receiver. Pickens fit a lot of what we needed.
Ooh.
And a pass. And Ojabo might be great, right? Ojabo might be great.
Yeah,
I heard it.
Yeah, that I was so confident. I was like super confident at draft time, especially after they traded Hollywood. Like I was confident before they traded Hollywood that they were going to take a receiver early, but certainly after, I was like, oh yeah, they traded Hollywood, which I didn't like, but I was like, yeah, they for sure are going to take a wide out. Will it be in the first round? If not the first round, then second round at the latest. Nope. Ravens said, no, we're good. No thanks. We don't need it. And apparently they tried, or they wanted some other guys, but those other guys that they wanted, they were off the board when the Ravens were picking. You mentioned earlier about how some people feel like the Ravens, they haven't gone all in on Lamar Jackson. I'm definitely one of those people for sure. Yeah. And since we're talking about the wide receivers, they were apparently trying to get DeAndre Hopkins. They tried to get T.Y. Hilton. They tried to get Juju Smith-Schuster. There's been a lot of trying. They apparently tried to get Adam Thielen the year that they got Yannick Ngakoue. But it's been a lot of trying at the position. But it's been a lot of not closing the deals.
Yeah.
And that's you got to try harder. You got to try a lot harder. Now, you also mentioned how you feel like it starts at Eric DaCosta. For me, I think it actually starts higher than that. It starts at Steve Bisciotti, but then it goes to John Harbaugh. And with John Harbaugh being a head coach, this team is his vision. He's the leader of this team. They don't look to Eric DaCosta. The players don't look to Eric DaCosta. I mean, they look to him for them checks to clear, but well, actually, no, they look to Bisciotti for the checks to clear because he's the one writing. For John Harbaugh, he is the head coach. So his vision, his philosophy, it's the Ravens. It's what he wants. So Eric DaCosta is like, all right, Harbaugh, how do you want to do this team? How you want to build this team? So Eric DaCosta goes to Harbaugh for that. And obviously they both got to sign off and whatnot. And Steve Bisciotti just like, all right, as long as y'all stay competitive, I'll cut the check and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so in my opinion, I think it starts with Harbaugh. Eric DaCosta obviously plays a huge part in all of that, a huge part. Because he is the one that's making the draft picks and whatnot. And of course, Harbaugh plays his part in that as well. But it starts at Harbaugh for me. But Eric DaCosta is also just the whole front office period. They all play their different parts and all their different roles and whatnot. So it's a lot, man. It's a lot. Hopefully this off season, they can tighten up a lot of stuff because they're not this bad, terrible front office, anything like that.
No.
Not the worst of the worst, anything like that. But they certainly have some improvements that they can make. And I just feel like a lot could have been a lot better than it was over these past like 4 or 5 years. But
yeah, I will say they're a solid front office.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is, yes, Baltimore fan, this is for you. My problem is my Baltimore fans have Eric DeCosta as in the pinnacle of GMs. They have it as he's Austin Newsom. You know, Austin. Look, you said something that I love. They have a lot of trying and a lot of trying not close. And you know who used to close? Austin Newsom. When we wanted Anquan Bolden, Austin Newsom got him here, right? And I defer to something you said. You said like, well, it started with Harbaugh, and yes, but at this point, what happens is EDC goes to Harbaugh and say like, hey, I'm thinking about trading him for D-Hop, for example. Mm-hmm. Do you think it will fit what you want to do, Harbaugh? Right? And Harbaugh will say yes or no. I'm sure Eric DeCosta at some point has said, I'm thinking about this player. Harbaugh's like, I don't know if he fits the, our mold, what we're doing. Eric DeCosta, okay, so I'm not pursuing it. But once Harbaugh says yes, now it goes to DeCosta to get that player, right? And see how much he's willing to give. Because Harbaugh's like, this is the players I want. You figure out how you're going to manage the cap. Harbaugh doesn't play that game, right? Harbaugh's like, you manage the cap, you manage the draft pick. Once draft day comes, I want to be there, right? Because it's going to be the players that I want on my team. It's DeCosta's the one that decides, I'm going to give a 2 and a 5th for Roquan Smith, right? Harbaugh says, can you give me that guy here? And then DeCosta's like, okay, let me see if I can get it to you. And sometimes DeCosta, I'm assuming, is like, well, they wanted this. I'm not willing to give this because this is going to compromise going forward. Harbaugh might be pissed or might be fine with that. Okay. So, and this is why might be with EDC. I thought the Orlando Brown Jr. I don't know if you remember, like a year before we traded him, I told you Orlando Brown's not going to be a Raven. And you said to me, like, you think so? Like, yeah, we can't pay him what he will want. And we traded him. And I knew we were going to trade him. And I was fine with trading him. My problem was the compensation we got for Orlando Brown. A top-tier tackle where the league is starving for tackle. And we got the equivalent of a 3rd-round pick. That upset me. Because for a 3rd-round pick, that's what an average guard/tackle gets. But Orlando Brown was coming from a great season playing left tackle. Now, he has not been as good as probably the Chiefs who won it. He's been good, but not like a top tier left tackle. He's playing there, but still good tackle. And the compensation we got was, in my opinion, not so great. And this is the problem now moving forward. Lamar, do we pay him or not? Look, does he deserve the money? Absolutely. And I always say to you guys, right, a player should always ask for every penny, right? And as fans, you can say like, but if he asks, but I'm not taking no pay cut for nobody in my job. And Raven, you're not telling YouTube, hey, you know what? I'm gonna shade some of that ad money, right? No, nobody. Nobody in your job, it's gonna be like, you know what? Keep some money. No, and Lamar should try to get every single penny. So for the fan base that tells me, Lamar should not take, he's greedy now because you're not gonna take less money for your from work. Okay, saying that now, as the GM, now you have to build a team, and we go to this scenario. They're 100 million apart, the report, right? I know you came out with a video today. That is significant. That is like astronomical, and I think we can both agree he should not play on the franchise tag. Not only because of Lamar. I mean, for Lamar, you're gonna give me 45 million guarantee for a year. He probably does it, but it's not good for the Ravens. Not good for building a team this year, right? Putting him for 45, absorbing all that cap money right now, because the difference when you sign him long term, you can start planning, staggering salaries. So then when he gets a 50 mil cap hit, you have other salaries to be lower. But 45 million day one, So he should not play in the franchise tag for neither the Ravens or Lamar. So what do you do? Well, the first thing, in my opinion, Raven, this should be resolved by the end of February. March, you need to know what you're doing. Like Eric DaCosta, by March 1st, he needs to know we're still 100 million. We can't play. We cannot breach this gap. Okay, Lamar, we're gonna franchise you, and we're gonna allow you to talk. And then teams, who's willing to give me X compensation, right? Okay, Lamar, you can talk to him, and see if those teams are willing. And then also with the buy-ins backside that, you know what, I might want to match that, right? Because the one thing that Lamar is not preview, because, and by the way, I don't hate him for him being his own agent. Also, and if he wants to be his own agent, be him, right? I don't care about that. But one thing that if you do have an agent, your agent talks to other teams. You cannot talk about Lamar, but he knows, right? You know, you're not talking about that about Lamar, but you're talking about Lamar. But Lamar cannot, right? Lamar cannot go to the GM of the Falcons and say, "Hey, how much are you gonna give me?" Because that's collusion, and then the Falcons are gonna get brought with a hammer.
Yeah, if they get caught, yeah,
exactly. Which that's what happened to the Dolphins, right? So saying that, Lamar thinks he knows what is that anybody will be willing to pay him, right? Because of Deshaun Watson. And the reality is, Deshaun Watson, there was one team that was willing to pay him that. And it only takes one team, to be fair.
That's it,
right? But he might go out there in the market, and teams might be similar to the Ravens, right? Because the Ravens, report, it's not that the Ravens are not willing to give him the million average salary that he wants, right? Like the 45 to 50, right? That's the reports. They're there, and the average is that guarantee, right? And again, the report says they're 100 mil guarantee apart. Do you think that's a good strategy? If they cannot sign him, franchise him, and let him talk to other teams, and maybe he can say, "Oh, you know what? I thought we were 100 million apart, but the highest offer out there." Well, Ravens, if I take that, we're only $50 million apart. Will you give me $50 million and I'll stay? But what do you think about that?
I think that the only way that they would be able to do that, I wonder if there could be like sort of a workaround the rules with that, because with the exclusive tag, that's the one that's about 45 mil, but only the Ravens can negotiate with other people. I wonder if there would be like sort of a workaround where they could be like, all right, Lamar, you and your camp, y'all can talk to other teams since we're going to trade you. Because if you do the non-exclusive tag, which you could do, that would allow him to talk to other teams, and you don't have to do any work around the rules for that, because the NFL allows it, then the max they will get will be 2 first-round picks, and that's it. No more, no less. So the Ravens, you know, they're going to want as many picks. If they do end up trading Lamar, they're going to want as many picks as they possibly can get. So I would think that they would definitely go the exclusive franchise tag route. But yeah, like you mentioned with that, the deadline is what, March 7th, I think. And free agency, I believe, is like March 12th or 14th. It's like within a week later after that. So right now the Ravens are they have a little under 28 million cap space. That exclusive franchise tag is about 45 mil. So you have to start the league year under the salary cap. So yes, whatever that decision is going to have to be made by then, like you mentioned. So they really don't have a choice. Now, that's where things could, like this. I know you talked about early on, you're not fully sold on Eric DaCosta, which I get. I can understand that. But this offseason, like, he got a lot to prove. He got a lot to show, because this is going to be his toughest offseason ever. Yeah. Like, look, going from about 28 mil under the cap, Lamar's tag is 45. So that's about 17 mil. And then you still got free agency, whoever you're going to want to try to bring in. And there's ways to work around it. I mean, we see New Orleans. New Orleans been doing it for the longest and whatnot. So there's ways to make it happen. But how will the Ravens make it happen? But everything, like, so much of this offseason depends on what goes down with Lamar Jackson. But yeah, they got some deadlines that are coming up fast, like really, really fast. And some decisions that they got to make really, really fast too. So yeah, Eric DaCosta, he's gonna have to be on it. him, Harbaugh, Bashadi, all of them, they're gonna have to be on it. As far as the that's a good point about the whole thing with the guaranteed money. Like you mentioned, yeah, all it does is takes just one team. One team got to be ready and able to do it and willing to do it.
Yep.
And then if not, then he will be able to see, if he could talk to other teams and whatnot, he could really see what the market is looking like. Because it could end up being even better than he thought. It could end up being even worse than he thought. He would just have to test it out and see. But I do think, like, if Ravens come to the decision, and if them and Lamar come to the decision, like, hey, this thing ain't gonna work out, then they're gonna want to start getting the trade in the works like earlier rather than later. You want to do it as soon as possible, so you know how you're gonna move in the offseason moving forward. Because you're gonna want to get that done before free agency, not even necessarily just before the draft, but even before free agency.
I agree.
Because that, if you're gonna keep Lamar, that changes how you go about free agency. If you're gonna trade Lamar, that changes how you go about free agency. So yeah, decisions got to be made fast.
Because think about this: the Ravens don't have a team to suck, right? They don't have a team that if they lose Lamar, but meaning that, sometimes you lose a quarterback and your team is so decimated that you can't win. The Ravens are still good enough that they're gonna compete. They can probably be like a 7-9 team, 6-11, right? So they're not gonna suck that they're gonna be a top pick, but they're not gonna be good to be up. They could. I mean, the defense is good enough, and if they don't have Lamar, the question is what they do next, right? Which is the main thing. And this is if the Costa has to trade Lamar, he needs to hit everything. Because if you trade Lamar, especially if Lamar is good where he goes, right? And by the way, if you're a Raven fan and you trade Lamar, God bless him. Hopefully he does great, other than against us, but against everybody else, he does good, right? You don't want to wish ill on Lamar. But if they trade Lamar, whoever quarterback is next is going to have a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And Eric DaCosta and company needs to prove to the locker room this is the right decision. Because that locker room loves Lamar Jackson. There's no question that locker room is locked on Lamar. So the only way you can say to the locker room, this was the best decision, is if you move from Lamar, almost you have to win right away. At minimum, a playoff appearance, right? At minimum. Yeah. So if Lamar gets traded, and I floated the idea, if Lamar gets traded, the best thing for Baltimore and for these other two teams, I think there's three teams that can, most teams can use Lamar. But what teams I think can trade Lamar and they don't get decimated by not having picks, a la the Broncos? Right now they don't have picks for like 3 years, right? The Texans is one, and D'Amico Ryan might be like, you know what, he's a veteran, I want to win right away. The thing with D'Amico Ryan, if you trade it with the Texans, you get 2 first-round picks this year, and you can get 1 next year, and the Texans still have 1 more pick next year, another first, right? That they will not trade it to us, but the Texans can say, we have Lamar, and next year we still have a first-round pick. Yes, they will not have a first-round pick this year, right? And you might have to give an extra second, but they will still have. They have, by the way, the Texans have 2 firsts this year, 2 seconds. No, 2 firsts this year, 1 second this year, and 2 firsts next year, and I think 2 seconds next year. So they have enough capital to trade for Lamar. And not hinder themselves on draft capital.
And then even if they traded both of their first round picks to get Lamar Jackson, it's like, okay, it's like them drafting a quarterback. And Lamar still, exactly. So he, what he can do in the league, and the Ravens, under the Ravens, he hasn't even reached his full potential yet. So it will be like you just trading up to get a quarterback. So
yeah, so the Texans is a dark horse team that it will be good for the Ravens because that they had the 2nd overall. And if they want to go quarterback for the Ravens, they could. But knowing the Ravens, they probably trade back from that 2nd overall pick. Another team that I'm thinking could have Lamar and they don't get hindered that much on draft capital, the Detroit Lions. Detroit has been starving for a good team, right? And they are in the cusp of making the playoffs. They were good this year. They might love golf. They might not. They might not. I think Lamar in that city will be great. They had 2 first round this year. They can also, if the Ravens don't want Goff, for example, they can probably trade Goff and get a second at least. They might even get a first for Goff, right? So they can, and they have a lot of cheap players, right? Meaning cheap, and their salaries are not expensive. So they can put Lamar, they can pay Lamar, and they still have a core. I think the Detroit Lions and the Ravens might even more willing to do that and trade him to the NFC. Right.
Yeah, that'd be another option.
The third team, Seattle Seahawks.
Oh,
now Seattle Seahawks had Geno, and with Geno, they made the playoffs. If they another team that has a lot of cheap salary, DK Metcalf is a high salary. That's about it. They don't have a lot of salary invested right now in that team because they just hit a lot of draft picks. They have 2 first round picks this year. They have only 1 next year, but you can get those 3, and then the following year, after that year, you will still have your first. So it's another team. They have a lot of capital, and you can sell to their fan base. Well, we traded Russell Wilson. Look what he did over there. We're getting a 26-year-old quarterback entering his prime, and we're still not decimated. We still have a young team. And Lamar probably will enjoy that even more because he has DJ Metcalf. He has the slot guy that I'm blanking.
Tyler Lockett.
Lockett always gets us fist. So what do you think about the scenarios?
You know what? I've thought about the Texans a lot. Not as in depth as you brought out with their draft picks and whatnot. I thought about the Lions a little bit, but the Seahawks is a team that I never really thought about. And that would be him going from an organization that's not like, they obviously haven't been in the Super Bowls recently, but that would be him going from the Ravens to the Seahawks, and just teams that are not terrible. They're not great right now, but they close. They're close. So if Lamar were to go there and they kept Tyler Lockett too for another year, he would have some weapons. That would be like the best 1-2 combination that he had, a DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
For sure.
And
Noah Fant as a tight end, not as good as Andrews, but still a good tight end.
That's true. So and they do a lot with the running game there as well. But yeah, just to have those passing options, man, that could be a beautiful thing. But yeah, that's a team that I never really think about when it comes to that. And it would be an NFC team too. And yeah, you mentioned they have 2 first round picks. Assuming one of them they got from the whole Russell Wilson trade.
Yep.
Man. Yeah, I never thought about the Seahawks before. That is real, and especially because Geno Smith, he's a free agent now.
Yep.
Oh man.
Not only that, think about this: how you slow a pass rusher usually is with good running and good movement in the pocket. They have to deal with San Francisco twice a year.
Oh yeah.
How to deal with San Francisco? Lamar could be that guy. Again, guys, this is me saying I would prefer if they keep Lamar. But those are trade scenarios that are realistic. I hope he doesn't go to Atlanta, to be honest, because in Atlanta, he doesn't have as much talent. London, he's okay. And then the tight end out of Florida, he hasn't paid out as we thought he was going to be.
Oh, Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. I mean, he might revive Atlanta, and Atlanta will go crazy for Lamar. But like in Seattle, he definitely has a team that he can definitely contend right away.
Now, real quick, I do think that if he went to one of those teams, especially even Atlanta, they haven't been the best recently, obviously. But you throw in Lamar Jackson with the Falcons, then free agents may be like, hold up, wait a minute, I'll join that team. And whether they take a little bit less to join or they just take whatever, then that could attract a lot of free agents and good players to come along with him, wherever he ends up going. So even if a team like right now, even if it's a team that's not close, things can change quickly. I mean, we've seen it this year with the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions been bad for however long, but now this year they were like super, super close to making the playoffs. And they did a lot of good this year, a lot more good than bad, especially over the past couple of years. So if Lamar was to go somewhere where they just haven't been able to get it done, things could change like right away, overnight.
In the case of Atlanta, that division was bad, right? So they're a Lamar away from just winning that division because the Saints weren't that great. Tampa Bay just lost their quarterback. They weren't great. And the Panthers, who knows, right? Okay, as I know we don't have much more time, but two more things.
Oh, you're
If
good.
we do trade for him, we do trade him. There's two scenarios, and I really struggle to see which scenario the Ravens go for.
Okay.
Either say Tyler Huntley, we're gonna try you for a year, right? I think Tyler Huntley, we've seen his best. I think Tyler Huntley has a ceiling, and we saw close to the ceiling. He's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a quarterback. I mean, if he's your quarterback, essentially you have to put everything great around him so those people can elevate him and he can elevate them a little bit. Lamar elevates people around him. I think people will have to elevate Huntley with them. So anyway, if you keep Huntley and you have, I don't know, 2 or 3 first round picks this year, essentially, and this is what will get people pissed off, you will have to bring a bunch of receivers and you might draft them all. You're going to bring a bunch of talent in that side. And then if you suck this year, which we're hoping not, because I will not hear the last in the AFC North talk, then you want to take those other draft picks. And the following year, there's 2 really good quarterbacks coming out of that class. And I can see then the Ravens trying to trade a bunch of these picks to get one of these quarterbacks. The other scenario is saying, well, we have a bunch of draft picks. Can we win? They would have to change the philosophy, and we know they are because the OC's gone, right?
I wouldn't say that. That's a start, but it's really up to Harbaugh. Everything is up to Harbaugh because we've seen them get rid of OCs in the past, and it'll still be the same issues and the same philosophy. But
fair enough.
Yeah, but go ahead.
No. That's a good point. But I was thinking the other side that they can do is see if one of these veterans quarterbacks is willing to cut to Baltimore under a different philosophy, different capital, right? Let's say a guy like Derek Carr. I think he is a mid quarterback. I think he's not bad. I think he's better than Huntley.
Yeah.
Not even close to Lamar, but he's better than Huntley. Can you bring a guy like Derek Carr? Our O-line is pretty good. Running game is pretty good. Your defense is good. Carr can come on a 20-something mil per year, and you say, Carr, I have 3 first-round picks. I'm going to put players around you. They're receivers or whatever, which, again, it will piss a lot of people off because they're going to say, you didn't do this with Lamar. Why are you doing it with this guy? But anyway, do you think that's a good strategy, or do you think the strategy of leaving Huntley?
Oh, man. Like you talked about earlier, whoever comes in, they're going to have a lot of pressure on them. They're going to have a whole lot of pressure on them if Ravens traded Lamar Jackson. As far as the Tyler Huntley route, I feel like if they ended up rolling with Tyler Huntley, it would be sort of one of those, all right, we'll see how this season goes. We'll hope for the best, but we're not really expecting too much. We're not expecting anything crazy. Because I feel like with Tyler Huntley, it would be different for him, though. I think he could do all right. I don't think he could do Lamar Jackson, but I think he could do all right. But you did bring out a good point about just if you could get everything around him, great, because that could really help him out a lot. But I think if they decided to roll with Tyler Huntley, I feel like it would be them just saying, all right, this year's a wash. But we really look into the future for whoever our next quarterback is, because I feel like with Tyler Huntley, there may be sort of a bridge type of quarterback for the Ravens. And with him, oh man, yeah, that would be crazy. But I could see them doing that. But I don't think that there will be a long-term investment in Tyler Huntley from the Ravens. But then at the same time, he could have a different mindset going into the next season because it will be his first season going into it preparing as a starter, right? So he will be throwing with the ones behind the starting offensive line consistently, not just, oh, Lamar's injured and Lamar not going to be in this game. All right, Tyler Huntley, you up. But it would actually be him, his show, his team, as weird as that sounds. But so it would be different. So I think he could do all right, but I think they would look at it more as a wash year if they rolled with Tyler Huntley. Now, as far as Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo,
that's even worse now.
Baker Mayfield,
might as well keep Huntley.
What other quarterbacks?
I mean,
Oh, it's rough, man.
I think it's basically Carr is a good enough quarterback that if you put better receivers around him, or in Baltimore, meaning he can be good behind this defense. Other than Derek Carr, what is out there right now? No, you keep Hundley. Why would you bring anybody else?
Yeah. So,
Or
yeah,
would
and
you
then
draft? Right? Would you draft?
I think it depends on how you feel about the quarterbacks this year. How the Ravens felt about the quarterbacks this year. If they really like saw somebody right here, right now that they feel that they could really do some stuff with, and somebody, and I just, and it would be sad either way, for me, because I feel like if they say, for instance, they trade Lamar, and then they draft a quarterback, they draft a new guy, and then whether he started this upcoming year or if he started 2 years down the road, and I would hope that they will really invest into that quarterback consistently, do everything you can to get the most out of him, because they didn't do that with Flacco consistently. They didn't do it with Lamar Jackson. So it's like, I would hope, like I already hope that they learned their lesson from Flacco with Lamar, but they didn't. I would hope that they learned a lesson with Lamar, but they didn't. So now with the next quarterback, if it ends up getting to that, then I would have hoped that they learned their lesson and they would really put a value on offense a lot more, put a value on the passing game, put the value on significant, consistent development of your quarterback. So you can know for sure from your side, like, hey, this is our guy. We're going to roll with him. So it's not it ain't all what's going on right now between the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. We don't even have to reach that point. Because it just, I always get reminded of like with Josh Allen. He came out and there was all these question marks about Josh Allen. They went, surrounded him, boom. All right, Josh Allen, you our guy. They took care of him. With Tua, he started off rocky, and I mean, right now it's still rocky, but even earlier this year when he was playing, they surrounded him and he looked a lot better, a whole lot better. With Kyler Murray, he was a little shaky early on, but he showed some nice little traits. But they went, got DeAndre Hopkins, and now they even brought Hollywood, and there was some injuries this year. But and with him, there's still some question marks. But you did put a lot around him, so you got a lot of your questions answered, even though there still are question marks. But they paid him. They paid him his money. He got his bread. So they obviously do have a lot of trust in him since they gave him all that bread. So it's like you see it with these different quarterbacks, and there's more examples, of course, but you see it with different quarterbacks where they like, hey, we got you. Yeah, we got you. We're gonna surround you and whatnot. And then of course this year with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, like they just went crazy with it on both sides of the ball. And I love it. I love what they did. And that ain't a Super Bowl. So I wish they would have done that for Lamar. But then like you just have finished saying, say, for instance, they get a new quarterback and they do it. A lot of us will be thinking, I know I'll for sure be thinking like, man, why hadn't they done this already?
Yeah. No, I agree. To also close this point, last year in the draft, when they traded Hollywood, right? Because that broke during the draft, but it was already set. At pick 14 comes and all the main receivers were going. They were going. And I was one that I was like, I don't know if they need to draft a receiver in the first round because I wanted Linderbaum, which we ended up getting, right? So I was like, I don't know. I want the center because I think that will help Lamar more, especially if we have Hollywood and we have Bateman. But we didn't have Hollywood. And the Ravens front office knew that we didn't have Hollywood. I was so mad in Raven. You don't even know. When we traded Hollywood, and I'm not the biggest fan of Hollywood. When we drafted him, it wasn't the type of receiver that I wanted. But the type of receiver that I wanted was there to take last year in the draft. And it was, you take that pick 14 and you give it to the Tennessee Titans and say, I'll take A.J. Brown. Instead of the Eagles, which gave them the 20-something pick. We had the 20-something pick because of Arizona, right? Because that's the pick we got for Hollywood, which ended up being in Linderbaum. But you would have taken that 14 pick and you should have traded for A.J. Brown. And I think we ended up getting Kyle Hamilton. God bless Kyle Hamilton. Great pick. He ended up being a good player for us this year. I think the guy that we really wanted was Jordan Davis and got picked by the Eagles the pick before. The Eagles were not willing to give the 13 overall pick. The Ravens should have given that 14 overall pick to the Titans for AJ Brown, and that would have been Hollywood Brown for AJ Brown. Essentially, is what you were doing. Yes, that would have been great because look what he has done for Jalen Hurts. Now they have other receivers as well, but we would have had Bateman being a number 2, not a number 1. Put less pressure on Bateman. Look how good Duvernay was when he was the number 2. Imagine how better he would have been as a number 3.
Oh man,
That's
a good point.
And this is why EDC is my biggest enemy. People will say Harbaugh, but I will go back to EDC. Last point, Raven. I just would like to know your opinion on your OC. We have been interviewing everybody.
Yeah.
Every single person. They see somebody in a corner with a football cap. Like, do you know how to call plays? Come here, let me interview you.
Might as well, man.
Which I can only assume, as most OCs are saying, like, well, I would like to be in the Ravens because you're a stable organization. But are you having Lamar? Or what is the plan? And since the Ravens had no plan, I think the Ravens and the Cardinals right now are both the worst picks, right? Like the Cardinals have the situation that looks like Kyler Murray. Some people are not sold in on Kyler Murray, and he is coming into this all guaranteed contract. So you're tied in even if you like him or not. And with the Ravens is, well, what are you doing? And since the Ravens cannot answer that, who you think or who would you want to be the OC for the Ravens?
Who I would want would be Eric Bieniemy, because I love with how the Chiefs offense, they're very consistent, and they're both consistent, but they're innovative all at the same time, because they find different ways to get different guys involved consistently. They find different ways to make different playmakers. Like they'll have Travis Kelce going off doing this thing all the time, but then they'll have other guys too. And like they got, like this year they had a Juju Smith-Schuster, McCole Hardman, even though I think now he's on injury reserve for the Super Bowl game. He's out. But they had different guys throughout the year, even Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I know a lot of people didn't like when they picked him in the first round a couple of years back and whatnot, and he's been up and down. But the Chiefs, they still find ways to get it done and to make it happen. Now, they do have a Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is that quarterback in the league. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is that guy for real. So shout out to him. But I would love if, and I know it's been said that Eric Bieniemy, he shares play calling duties with Andy Reid. So I would love if he came over and be like, hey, all right, I'll call the show now. I'll call the shots. This will be my offense. And then he may bring in over some coaches and whatnot too. I would love that. And one thing that I would love about it even more is that I feel like with Eric Bieniemy, he wouldn't just be coaching to just be an offensive coordinator. I feel like he would be coaching so he could hopefully get promoted to being a head coach of whoever the next team would be. Because I wouldn't want somebody to come over and be like, all right, I just want to be an OC. I want to be an OC for the rest of my career. That's it. No, I want somebody who wants more, because if they want more for the future, then they're going to be coaching like they want more for the future. And they're going to be putting their best foot forward. So I would like it to be Eric Bieniemy. Now, like you talked about earlier, it's a big question mark with whoever the Ravens are going to get at OC, because you don't know what's going to happen with Lamar yet. So I wonder, and thinking about it got me a little worried. I wonder if, since they don't know who's going to be that guy yet, they don't know if they're going to have Lamar not yet. I wonder if that would make them go in-house for offensive coordinator instead of bringing somebody from the outside in. So we'll see.
Yeah, for me, I would say him and the guy from Georgia.
Monken.
Yeah, those are my two favorite. In the case of EB, he can sit back and say, "Oh, I'll wait to see if, let's say EB really wants Lamar. Let's say I'll go to you if you have Lamar." EB can sit back and wait, right? Because he has a job. It's not like it's same with Monken. And nobody right now looks to be hiring EB, at least not for head coach. And if you're not going to be a head coach, the opening jobs that are out there for OC right now, none of them are as enticing as Baltimore. The good thing about Baltimore, and also the Texans, if they have the right quarterback, is the Texans, D'Amico being a defensive coach, and in Baltimore, Harbaugh not being an offensive coach, you will have here You can call plays. You can do your thing, right?
Mhm.
If you go to under OC, a previous OC, that guy's still gonna. Which is what happens to EB, right? People are like, "Oh, you're on Andy Reid, blah blah blah." Well, you know
Mhm.
what? Under Andy Reid, he probably has learned a lot of good football, and I agree with you. I would love if we bring EB. EB would be on number one. And my hope is he's here only for a year, because if he's only here for a year, that means that we did a hell of a job in that first year, meaning he probably took us further than we have, because he's not going to be here for a year if we don't make the playoffs. If he's here for a year only, that means we went through the playoff and we went deep. I don't know about Super Bowl, but at least deep.
Yeah.
That's how he gets a head coaching job. And the guy from Georgia, Monkey, I just think when you see the Georgia offense, it's very balanced. He knows how to call plays. He knows how to scheme it. Now the question is, it's always my question with somebody from college. In my opinion, it's easier to scheme in college, especially when you have the team that Georgia has, because the
Yeah.
other team usually has a weak link. So if you know who the weak link is, you can exploit it. Now he has done a hell of a job. This is not taking away from him. I just think if you ask me, EB by far, then probably Monken. But those are my top two. In-house, I don't know. The guys from in-house, although I like them all, I would like somebody who has had experience calling plays. That's just me. That's what I would like for this OC.
I think I'm pretty sure T Martin had experience calling
A little bit.
plays.
A little bit.
I think he did. But I would just, for me, I would just rather somebody from the outside in to bring a fresh perspective. Even though T Martin hasn't been here too long, and he was an outside guy. It wasn't like he was promoted from within to become the wide receiver. No, they brought him from the outside. And so if they did go with an inside hire, that would probably be my preference. Especially because he doesn't have experience in the NFL calling plays, and I like that, and I would be willing to take that risk if they went with him, because it would be something brand new. Like these, they could go look at his stuff from college or whatnot, but they don't have anything on him in the NFL. So he would have to be innovative. He would have to be creative. He would have no choice. Yep. So I would, if they went in house, then I wouldn't mind it being him.
Okay. Well, thank you, Raven. Appreciate you coming here. Appreciate everybody that's been in the chat room. Thank you for everybody that's gonna watch. In Raven stuff, you know where to find in Raven everywhere. Team Keep It Clean. It's also in the tag of the video. I appreciate y'all. We will see you next time. Appreciate you, Raven.